Good morning, all you astrologically curious people. I hope you're having a beautiful morning. We're having a good morning. We're excited about our conversation. We're all feeling a little bit of the frazzle, the wild that's in the air right now, but yay, we're just going to ride it and have some fun with it. So today we're finally moving into talking about astrology within a context of some social phenomenon. So we've been laying some groundwork so we have some basic common language about astrology and all of the wonderful things that insights that it can offer us. Today we're going to look at all of the recent planetary activity in Aquarius, in the sign of Aquarius. And we're going to reflect back on it because much of it has ended, so to speak. You know, most of those planets have moved beyond Aquarius and are moving into other signs, but we're going to talk about it because it's a great way to be able to look back at how we felt it and what sorts of things are happening in our lives due to this. So some of the social phenomenon that we've been noticing in our group and maybe with the people around us is some burnout and some overwhelm. And there may be more, and this great group of people will throw in the other ones that they're noticing as they decide to say some things. So it would be easy to ask ourselves, why is all this activity in Aquarius so important? Because, of course, now all the activity is in Pisces and in Aries. But the reason why it's been so important and so impactful, and we've felt it so much in Aquarius, is because Aquarius in the last year and a half got activated by Pluto. So Pluto came into Aquarius. Pluto is a slow-moving planet. It's an excavator, deep-diving planet that really wants to bring things to the surface. And so Pluto is going to be here for another 13 to 15 years. So this part of our lives, this part of the sky, the zodiac is going to be active and lit up for a while. So we're going to probably notice it. And it's going to be slow, progressive sorts of things that we're noticing. But having all of these planets, a huge stellium move through Pluto in the last couple months has just lit it up and kind of started things quickly, like jumping in feet first as opposed to a slow trickle. I'm going to go ahead and show you the chart of when everything moved into Aquarius, not Pluto. Pluto had already been there, but I'm going to show you where the final planet, slower moving planet, personal planets, excuse me, not slower moving planet, faster moving planets, the personal planets, when that finally moved into Pluto. So I've titled this Mars Moves into Aquarius to join the stellium. So we look down here at Aquarius in the third house in this chart. And you can see that Mars is at 0 degrees. It finally moves into Aquarius, and it's there with the sun, with Pluto, with Mercury, and with Venus. And so that's a lot of what we've been feeling for the last month, but we've been feeling it for longer because some of these planets moved in to Aquarius before January 22nd. And then all of this planetary activity gets a little bit extra juice and a little bit extra highlighted when we experience a solar eclipse in Aquarius. So I'm going to show you that chart now. So here we have new moon, solar eclipse. So what tells us it's a solar eclipse is that it's a new moon and it's within a certain amount of degrees with one of the nodes. And here's our north node. And so we have this new moon solar eclipse. And you might notice, we're not going to talk about this today, but you might also notice that it's in a square with Uranus, which is also a really powerful planet. And so it was a bit of a doozy. It was a big solar eclipse. And we'll talk about how we felt it personally. And then you can, reflect on how you maybe, as you're watching this video, felt it yourself. And then finally, I'm just going to show you where we're at now, what the astrology is today, and what the chart is doing today, so that you can see just what we're looking at and how maybe some of the intensity and my fellow co-hosts here will tell us what they're feeling if they felt a decrease in intensity or not. But where we are today, so February 22nd, and we have now just Pluto. And again, Pluto is going to remain here for 13 to 15 more years. It's probably going to pop out for a little bit at the very end of that time frame and back in. And then Mars is here, and Mars will be leaving within about a week or 2 weeks. So this Pluto ingress into Aquarius signaled kind of a changing of the guard or a new age. And so you can reflect on how you've been feeling this changing of the guard or what this new era feels like. It's indicative for each of us. So I'm going to pass it on to Rhiannon, who's going to give us a little more information, and then we'll get into it.
Tawa. Thanks, Tawa. So this changing of the guard, this Pluto in Aquarius feels like it just screams Saturn to me. And I want to just focus on the stellium that Tawa just showed through the sign of Aquarius. Knowing that Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, this eclipse that took place at 28 degrees of Aquarius was hosted by Saturn. So it's interesting to see this Pluto moving. It was previously in a Saturn ruled sign, but moving into another Saturn ruled sign, and then co-present with that eclipse on February 17th. So I kind of want to talk just a little bit about Saturn and reflect on the significations of that and like how that might play out over time for us, because we know that eclipses take time to unfold. We may not feel that eclipse on the day that it happens, but it's something that gradually shows or reveals itself over time. So usually over about a 6-month period. And I also I was just thinking about this and reflecting on it as well, just the fact that the nodes are going to be moving into a Saturn ruled into Aquarius. And we're going to have a lot of eclipses across that Saturn, Aquarian, and Leo Sun axis over the next year and a half. And then we have another round of it too. So there's a lot of Saturn in the air. And so when we look at Saturn, we know that it's the farthest away from the sun when we look at it, its planetary aspect. So it's cold, dry, isolated, separation from like the sun, that the driving force of like what gives us life. So when we think about that, we think like lack of resources or restrictions, and we look at Saturn as well as the greater malefic. And when we say greater malefic, it's just that Saturn is slower when it moves. So it's a heavier agenda, longer lasting, greater malefic. So focusing on thinking about all of that and reflecting, I also want to look at its positive sides, because Saturn is not all bad. It has gifts to give us. It teaches us wisdom. It teaches us our resilience. It shows us where we're resilient and creates that through hardship, which is that malefic or difficult aspect of Saturn. So just looking at this, like what we might see pass through the next 6 months, and then thereon, as we have more eclipses in Saturn, on that Saturn aspect. I think we're going to have, we will have, we'll have the North Node in Saturn, and then in a Saturn ruled sign in Aquarius and moving into Capricorn until 2029. So we have quite a road of that. along with Pluto, as Tawa had mentioned, just moving 15, taking about 15 years to move through that sign. So I want to reflect and think on how can we use this? Like, how can we use this information? And I think it's really helpful astrologically to think, how it's like preparing for winter. I don't know if any of you watch Game of Thrones, but when I saw that last night as I was reflecting, I'm like, oh my gosh, winter is coming, like the winter that's last 10 years, like, so a good, um, the way we can use this is to reflect on how we can prepare for that, and just knowing that it's coming can help us use our tools, uh, and just create an easier, hopefully easier process, because we know it might be a little bit tough. So that is what I have to say on my take on this stellium and eclipse in Aquarius. So I can leave it open, Natasha or Brett, if you have any comments or anything you'd
Yeah,
like to share.
I like what y'all both said, and I really like that we brought up Saturn and how important it is when Pluto's in Aquarius. And I really like that you brought up how even though Saturn is very heavy and Saturn can be dark and cold and challenging, the good things that can come from Saturn as well. Um, and even though, yeah, Saturn is a greater malefic, um, there's a lot of growth that can come from Saturnian things, as contradicting as that sounds, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things that I love about Saturn is, that not only does Saturn emphasize responsibility and accountability, which I'm one of those people who really feels like as humans, we really have to be responsible and accountable for ourselves in every way. We just don't get to let ourselves off the hook. Um, but also, what I love about Saturn is that Saturn really appreciates and values healthy boundaries.
Mm,
And so many of us, I think, can struggle with that, with what it looks like to live in a world in connection with other people, but also just really honoring the boundaries that we need to have to be living in a way that actually works for us each individually, and living in accordance with our own um, true needs and authentic way of being in the world. And boundaries really allow us to do that. So that, Saturn has been a friend of mine for a long time, I feel, because of that.
Yeah. I think, Pluto being, I know we had Pluto in Capricorn, which was a tough ride for everybody. And Pluto in Aquarius, I think this is where we get to see that wisdom of Saturn show up maybe a little bit more apparent because it is in the sign. Um, of the collective. And so it's not
Mm.
centered so much on the Capricornian kind of ideals, but more of the greater um, mindset, right? And so I think there's like greater opportunity. I also think it's good. You got to slow, Saturn brings its wisdom over time, and Pluto is a slow moving planet. It's going to be with us for a long time. So as difficult as both of those planets might be and what they bring, um, I think it's a nice pair to work together, given it's an air sign. Like it's going to be a slow process because air can move fast. And, you know, um, and yes, and I'll talk about the art, symbology in a second, but because it moves fast, I think it's nice that we have this slow moving planet working or hosting another like an even slower moving planet to bring about those purgative changes. So yeah, it was all great. I'm gonna just bring up actually uh some words that we all thought about and we've learned these words or we have felt these words to describe uh, Pluto and then to describe Aquarius and to look at what an eclipse is, just on kind of a really fundamental level to give you an idea of when we're looking at a planet and we're looking at a sign, how do they come together and how do they express themselves? And so Tawa and Rhiannon and Brett already gave some really amazing insights into um, what we look at in terms of Saturn. And Saturn is the ruler of Aquarius. So I will get to Aquarius in a second, but I'm just going to list some words that we all like to use to describe Pluto and what it might feel when Pluto transits a sign for you. And so, with Pluto, there's a nice way to look into studying Pluto is to look at the mythology. I won't really talk about it today, but it is this idea of going down underground where things are hidden and bringing them up to the surface. And so, just a very simple idea of if there's something below many, many layers and has to be brought up to a visible sense or a, the sense that you can see it and you have to experience it, that can be very difficult. There's reasons why things are way, way below ground and we don't see them. And so when things do come up from the bottom, that can be very intense. And so Pluto as a planet brings intensity to where whatever sign and whatever house, whatever experience in your life, it brings a sense of intensity, sometimes an intangible sense of intensity, right? You can't explain it, but you can feel it. It is, as I said, digging from deep below the surface. It is like the excavator, right? And I will actually quote Adam Ellenboss, our amazing teacher from Nightlight. He said this once, and I felt like it was the thing that helped me understand Pluto. And he said Pluto is like a big zit. He said you can, it's developing, it's under the skin, it's under the layers. You know, some people, if you feel a heartbeat, there's something under there and it has to come up to the surface in order to release itself, release the toxins in the body, whatever it might be. And so I often think about Pluto being a zit that needs to be cleared. Oh, yes, it's an excavator. But in that, it's also a transformer because when you have things under the surface and you bring them up to the light, you can um, look at your own experience and your own situation in a different perspective with this new information from deep below the surface. Pluto is also terribly obsessive, right? And this is the thing about when it wants to dig deep, it will dig deep. And the best way to deal with this is to surrender to it and be kind to it, and its obsessive tendencies, but to observe that it is obsessive and notice it. Pluto is unveiling. As I said, it brings up what is below the surface. So whatever is hidden will be revealed. It will be unveiled, and it unravels. So if we think of anything like a ball of yarn that is tightly wound, it can unravel that nice ball, whether it is nicely, tightly machine. I don't know what you call it. I'm sure there's a term for getting balls of yarn together, but beautifully what you would see at a store, or it could be a hot mess of like knotted yarn. Either way, it can unravel. So, Pluto transits, it's difficult to do that unraveling, excavating, unveiling, but it ultimately is releasing from tension. And of course, the last one is purging. So when it does release, it wants, like the zit, it wants to just purge and release from the system. So Pluto, when it is in a sign, this is what it's going to do, right? It is going to dig up what we're all afraid of, and it is going to bring it to the surface so that we can deal with it. And so I'm just going to move on to Aquarius. And being in the sign of Aquarius, we're in the sign, an air sign. It's a sign that is unconventional. It is a sign that is about communication and likes to think it's about ideas and ideals. And you think of Prometheus, bringing the fire down to humans and giving them knowledge. It is always the pursuit of what else can we be doing? The sign of progress and innovation. And how else can we better ourselves? And so it describes the collective. It's a sign that describes systems. And so we think about the nervous system. In medical astrology, it is highly tied to the nervous system. And electricity. And so it's with the Leo Aquarius axis, you see the circulatory and cardiovascular system are linked. Being that is a collective sign, it's also a great collaborator. And so I do remember hearing once somebody saying, Aquarians don't like humans, but they love humanity. And for the Aquarius rising people I know in my life, that feels very fitting. They're very human-centered and then, but still Saturnian. They're like, that's okay, I'll be by myself for a little bit. Um, so yes, it's an electric sign. You feel the sense of electricity, I think, in your body when you have all the personal planets, the stellium that went through of Mercury, Mars, Venus, the moon, the sun. These are all personal planets that will affect your body and your immediate mindset. And so there is this spark of electricity that could be wonderful and can be enlightening, but it also is a spark of electricity is also kind of is really uncomfortable in the physical body. And as I said, it's a circulatory, it relates to the circulatory system. And communication is a big descriptor of Aquarius because it is about systems and it is about spreading out and connecting. And so we look at Pluto being this planet that is going to dig up and reveal. And that, we think about that in Aquarius, and that is going to appeal to our mindset, our thoughts, our ideas and ideals. And so Pluto being an Aquarius is there to change how we think. I think to change how we think our long-standing beliefs. If it's a Saturnian, Aquarius being a Saturnian sign, it's our long-standing beliefs. And Pluto is there to ask us, is that really what you think? With everything changing, do you continue to think that way? Or is there room for you to grow and innovate and change? So I will move on to just a few words to describe the eclipse. And an eclipses happen 4 times a year. They come in 2 pairs. They'll come in a pair of a solar and a lunar eclipse. And the recent eclipse that we just had in Aquarius was a solar eclipse. So a solar eclipse is a new moon. It is the sign of something starting. And I think to what Rhiannon was saying is that we have this time with Aquarius, with a Saturn ruled sign, with Pluto and a Saturn ruled sign for a long time, that it is good to see how to process that and get comfortable with it. It's a long transit, and so seeing what is going to be new in our ideas and our ideals, what is Pluto going to change? Um, we have included here that, a lunar eclipse is the conclusion. And so we're going to see that when we have our lunar eclipse in a couple of weeks, how different does that feel? It will be in a different sign. And how will that feel compared to something starting new in the sign of Aquarius? Um, an eclipse is unfolding. And it is the evolution of gifts that comes out over the course of, 6 months or so, that can be either destructive or progressive. And in this case, I find that eclipses are just mystical. We don't know what can come of them, but just when we come upon an eclipse, you walk steadily through it, and it's good to observe and understand and not panic. It happens every year. Those are just some words that we put together that, might be pretty standard, but also very personal to all of us. Um, Throughout this stellium that we've experienced in Aquarius, with Pluto being there as kind of a guard, standing guard, as all of the personal planets come through and kind of high five Pluto as they pass him by. They're all having conversations with Pluto. And so having the moon, which is your body, having Mercury, which is your mind, having Venus, which is your sense of love and connection to other people, and having Mars, your sense of drive and ambition, all come in to the sign of electricity and collective systems and nervous systems and communication. And you have this guard at the door that says, okay, all of those things, your relationships, your mindset, your body, your vitality, we forget the sun was in there, of course, we're going to all dig it up. We're going to dig it up, bring it all to the surface, all the things you've been avoiding about all of those things, those topics, it's going to come up. And you may not realize it, but you're going to end up kind of working through some challenges as Saturn will bring through Aquarius in your thought process. And then it will kind of, roll out from there. So I just wanted to give those words as each one of us is going to explain how Pluto has affected us in Aquarius and how this stellium has felt it for us over the last few weeks. And I will just escape this.
Thanks for breaking that down. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, so personally for me, Pluto's in my sixth house. So to me, it feels almost like a heavier, dragged out Saturn transit at times, for better or worse. Um, but there's been like these intense feelings to having to start to sacrifice more things. Sixth house can be like the daily things that we have to do to kind of keep yourself going, in order to accomplish some of the goals that I've set out for myself. And so my ascendant ruler is also opposing Aquarius. So even though Pluto transits are like intense at times, I feel like I have a decent understanding of how Pluto expresses itself in Saturn's masculine temple. I'm sure this transit will be like continue to be difficult relating to sixth house topics because, Pluto is inherently difficult and so is the sixth house. It is what it is. But like we were talking about Saturn, I try to look at it as an opportunity. I mean, you want to try to look at any transit as an opportunity, to grow and reflect, and with Pluto ravaging its way through the sixth house, I think it provides a lot of those, in my opinion. And then also, this transit is helping me to understand the sign of Aquarius a little bit better too. The liberating, the innovating, the liberal yet structured way that Aquarius does things.
Yeah, that's great. I think that is super important to remember is that, yeah, that it there is that
Oh yeah, you
liberal
have
way.
Pluto on the sixth too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I, yeah, I'm gonna let somebody else tell their story, but yeah, I never thought about that way, and I keep forgetting is that Saturn is helping um contain or provide a container, provide some limits for um that frenetic shift of the mind, right? Because I also have um Pluto opposing my chart ruler. And so
Mm.
for me, that's Mercury. So this is the mindset, right? Spin of the mindset. At least Saturn is there to give it some structure, right? In order for it to spin a little bit.
Yeah, like there's some order and chaos.
Absolutely. Yeah. Order and
Yeah.
chaos. It's like the theme of the day, man. Order and chaos.
I
Yeah.
I really appreciated what you both kind of said and emphasized, Tasha and Brett, about just the airy, electrical nature of Aquarius and understanding it a little bit more, and also that it's fast moving, but these slower moving planets are trying to, tell it to, or requiring it to behave a little requiring the sign of Aquarius to behave a little bit differently. But because for me, I really dramatically, I mean, I've said in multiple times in multiple forums that I felt like when Pluto into, I was associating it with 2025 because it became so prominent at the beginning of 2025. But really, it was when Pluto really fully moved into Aquarius and wasn't going to go back into Capricorn anymore, that I felt like my life moved into warp speed. And it really truly just felt like, like we hit the warp button and have not been able to find it to turn it back off yet. And just right now I was reflecting, I was like, well, that for me, that makes perfect sense because I'm fairly comfortable with like the Capricornian, like let's really sludge through this and do a lot of work. And, I mean, the earthy nature of it, being Pluto having been there, and not to say that it wasn't just as revelatory and transforming and difficult. And, I definitely had to move through, but it was allowing me to move through things at a pace and in a style that is a little bit more comfortable to my Capricorn moon probably, and just being able to deal with that pace in that way. And so, the overwhelm that I have felt and the nervous system activation, and it has been really quite noticeable, dramatically noticeable, like all of the things that I do to keep myself grounded and centered and healthy nervous system wise. I'm still doing them all, and I'm doing them actually even more diligently, and it's still just like barely enough to keep me feeling grounded and like I know where I'm moving as I move through space. So, and then Tasha, when you were talking about the eclipse and the mystical part of it, and when I was thinking about the eclipse I was having, it's like one of those moments where we have to take a step forward and we have no idea where our foot's going to land. It's like, and you have that sensation of like, I could step and fall off a cliff, or I could step and there's something really amazing there to support me, or I could, we just don't know. And of course, the universe tells us, and that's the mystical part of it, the universe tells us that we're always supported, that there's always going to be something there to catch our foot, when we take that step. But the unknown of it is just so overwhelming and hard to trust. So that has been, kind of an interesting way that I'm particularly feeling it. But also the deep dive into the collective systems and stuff. I really feel like as a society, as a humanity, as an individual, I am so hyper aware of the micro or the minutia, or it's like the microaggressions of sexism or misogyny or racism, or just general prejudice. That has become so apparent. It's like to use your zit idea. It's like, oh, the whitehead has formed. Like we can see it,
Yeah.
And it's probably even really appropriate that it's a whitehead because because there's such this white supremacy, white narcissism, I've heard it called, which is beautiful. That has become so obvious. Like it's just so apparent, and maybe it's apparent to somebody who's looking. So I'm sure that there are still those people in the world who haven't quite understood what this is, and maybe are feeling it as a something to make them want to double down and continue to reinforce and support their beliefs that allow for those sorts of things to be happening in the world. But it's really interesting to me to see just how much it's coming up into the air, and how much it's being unearthed, and how much it's, and for me, it's hitting my eighth house. So eighth house is all about karmic contracts and other people's stuff, like other people's money, other people's skills, other people's, so it's really interesting for me because I feel like I've moved from this very introspective, like I really get to look at my own shit and work through my own shit, to now having to navigate other people's shit. I
Mhm.
mean, for lack of a better way of saying it, but it really is
Yeah.
true. It's like I'm mucking through
Hmm.
other people's shit, and
Yeah.
I'm doing it in
Yeah.
a way that is unfamiliar and kind of uncomfortable to me.
Yeah.
So,
It's like
that's
in the dark.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And without the benefit of knowing what tools are best suited to the other, whatever other it is that I'm, dealing with in that moment. So I feel like I'm having to do a lot of really intense learning of how to navigate, you know. And this is a simple example that's not too deep or dark or difficult, but this year my mother passed away, and I guess last year now, because she passed away in 2025 in April, so we're coming up on a year, and I became the executor of her estate. And I have a brother that struggles with functioning in the world, and I have managed to have a pretty uh, boundaried, healthy, like I'm not going to do when you're choosing to indulge in addiction and not taking care of mental health and all of those things, that I'm not really interested in having a relationship with you. And that's kind of been the dynamic for our whole life. And now I'm in a position that I have to have this slight relationship with my brother, because I'm the person who's setting up trusts and doing all of those
Mhm.
sorts of things. And so to in a much more hands-on way, have to learn how to not be an enabler and not be
Mhm.
an unhealthy sort of, you know, uh, it's just been really interesting to navigate, and having, it's like I learned how to do it from a distance when I didn't actually have any daily things that required me to negotiate and navigate it on a regular basis. And now it's like, I guess I'm learning a little bit of, I can understand a little bit more why my mother tended to be such an enabler, you know, because in a lot of ways it's just a lot easier. It's hard to set boundaries. It's hard to have to, on a regular basis, have somebody to give you their spiel about how they need your financial help or how they need this or that from you, and be like, that's just not how I'm going to engage with you. Like, that's just not the relationship we're going to have. Um,
Yeah.
so it's been, that's just an example of like what it's like when you're not just dealing with your own way of engaging in the world, and having to learn how to navigate other people's ways of engaging with the world and how it intersects
Mhm.
with you, and how do you do that, and in some ways probably this is the universe blessing me that it's all happening in a Saturn ruled sign, because Saturn is just so good at knowing what's healthy, what's not healthy, where it is and isn't willing to engage, how you might actually be able to give somebody a hand up, but not um, just add into their dysfunction and their disability in those ways,
Mhm.
you know. So it's just been really
It's
interesting.
like, I was going to say that it's like, with Pluto bringing up the patterns, and it's giving you an opportunity. With Saturn, this is where we don't think of Saturn this way, but having Saturn there as like your host is really nice, because it is going to help. Like you said, it's holding that boundary where the same pattern comes up, but now you can deal with it in a way that, as hard as it is, it supports you, and supports, ultimately would support the relationship, right? Because the pattern, that's what Pluto does, right? It's just going to keep bringing those patterns around. It's like, here
Right.
you go. Here you go. Here's
Yeah.
another opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
but it's an accelerated, I mean, that goes back to the
Mm,
Aquarius, the air of it is everything feels very accelerated. So,
Mm.
my tools or my skills that I've built of knowing that I need to kind of take a minute, process, it's like I'm having to relearn those, like, oh yeah, even when the world is throwing things at me, really fast, I still, have to take a step back,
mm.
take a breath, you know, press the brake a little bit, try to find some deceleration so that I can have clarity with it.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
know what? It reminds me of somebody brought something up the other day about it's I feel like it's almost Pluto and Aquarius is a bit level setting in a sense where
Mm.
um like I remember teaching kids to use Photoshop and Illustrator, and something I noticed is that it was level setting because students who were um, incredibly like high achieving in their academics and students who were not as high achieving were both level set. Um, both came in at the same point where you don't know anymore. Um, you don't know any more than the person beside you. So everybody's at the same level of kind of nervous disruption of, I don't know where things are going, and I have to still take a step forward, right? So everybody's like kind of in that space in different areas of their lives. Like I just don't know how to navigate this. I'm navigating in the dark, but I have to keep going. And because the energy is just pushing you, like you don't have a choice. So yeah, Rhiannon or
Yeah, I
Beth.
was gonna say, did anybody want to touch
Yeah.
on burnout a little bit? Yeah, or whatever it is that's coming up for you.
For me, from my perspective, and I know we have to wrap up soon, but um, from my perspective, this Pluto's running through my 12th house. So for me, as if I zoom in, um, it's kind of like I feel like it's more for me like just staring into the abyss of I'm not, I don't really know what I can't see it. Like I'm starting to see it as Pluto is making its way. Um, especially as it starts to make contact with my Venus in the 10th. But I I am noticing some slight things come up, some just like definitely in the 12th house arena of like self-undoing and like ways that we limit ourselves and hold ourselves back. And just looking at that, like how that actually, for me, having the whole sign square to my moon, my natal moon in Taurus. Um, if I don't, if I don't like address those things, how it starts to affect my health, my physical health, and how, just really like taking, I just talking about Saturn, how it slows you down, it gives you time to reflect. I think that is a huge theme for me right now, especially, and I definitely find myself like looking at that pattern and aspect and just kind of coming back and taking that time to say what is going on, but not really having any idea of what is going on. So
Mm,
yeah, it's I think for me it's definitely gonna be a great time for like a lot of journaling, which I used to do a lot of and I haven't for a while, and I know that it's at Saturn, like you have to do it. You have to get in there. Like I don't want to. So, but yeah, that's probably the biggest thing for me at this time.
That's a
Yeah.
great idea about
Mhm.
journaling and um, doing things in solitude to maybe like reveal
Mm.
like some of the things that Pluto is trying to reflect
Mhm.
at the moment or throughout the transit or whatever. That's an awesome idea.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
And especially since it's just gonna play out, as Saturn's agenda evolves as the agenda of this, eclipse and these Pluto being moving through that house, helping us to kind of connect the dots as things evolve. So
Mm,
I never thought about that's I'm glad you brought that up. And um just how does because Pluto is so intense, and it can
Hmm.
be so loud at times. How does it reveal itself in a place that's so isolated
Mm.
as the 12th house, you know? And that's why
Yeah.
like you were saying earlier, I thought the journaling is such an awesome way to kind of like tap into that, or even like meditation or things like that.
Hmm.
Kind of like get into that mode, like, okay, like let's go into Pluto land for a little bit. As
Yeah.
crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
curious, just, quickly from everybody, what people's energies are feeling like, and sleep and stuff, like with this much kind of electrical activity and nervous system activation. Are people feeling like sleeping well or feeling tired and not sleeping well? Because of course the typical nervous system activation when our sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight part of the nervous system, gets activated, it gives us that tired but wired sort of thing where you're really tired but you can't really rest productively. And so I'm just curious about, it made me think, well, one, I was curious about that. And then I was curious, Rhiannon, when you mentioned that you feel like you're just kind of looking out into the abyss. And so I was curious about what are the visceral, the somatic sensations that you're having when you look out into the abyss. Are you able to look at it philosophically, or is there some stuff that's you're feeling due to that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's and I know we're almost at time here, but
Yeah.
I I think for me, definitely just I feel like it's definitely showing up in my body, especially with that square to my moon.
Yeah.
Um, showing up as inflammation, and yeah, especially I don't normally have a problem sleeping personally, like too much sometimes if things get thrown off. But yeah, I got Uranus right on that moon, right? I'm transiting Uranus right on that moon, and I suspected that it would happen, that I would have some issues, and it has been. I haven't been sleeping as well in this last week, so it's interesting.
Yeah. Hmm. How about you two, Brett and Tasha, before we finish up here? What's your energy level or sleep been like, just to,
Sleep has been sleep. Uh,
yeah.
it's good and bad, and it's something I just need to continue to get better at. Um, I usually have a pretty vivid dream life,
Hmm.
so that's still been going pretty strong, for better or worse sometimes. Um, but if anything, and it was like Random when you're talking about like the 12th house, with Pluto going through your 12th house, it's like if anything, this time is a reminder for me to like um continue to work on the things like meditation, journaling, being mindful, um, trying to stay present, things like that. Yeah. So just continue and just like work on things like that. I'm not perfect by any means, so
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
getting better at that,
Same.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll keep it brief. So when Pluto went into, I have some interesting experiences with Pluto in Aquarius right from its ingress a couple of years ago. It ingressed and moved back out. Some positives and some negatives. And when Pluto ingressed into Aquarius last year, I lost my puppy. And so that was the Mars Pluto opposition. It was on the day that it perfected. So there's a really good example of it throwing you into the depths. And so the last year has been working through that. But I can say that because I have Mercury in the 12th and it's Pluto has been opposing it. So the entire year, it's just like the two of them are working together. So it has felt like my brain is in a blender. And ironic, funny enough, and it felt really intense throughout the whole year trying to figure it out. And I really didn't quite understand it until just recently. So by the time the Aquarius stellium came, I felt the heightened sense of electricity in my body because Aquarius is my sixth, and your sixth house is your house of health. Besides the moon, besides the first house, the sixth house is your house of health. And so with Pluto there, yeah, that and the stellium. there was an increased sense of electricity. So I constantly feel like a vibration. Like I feel like if I put my finger near an electrical socket, I'm
Yeah.
and that
Sparks will
has
fly.
Yeah.
sparks will fly.
Yeah.
And that's also because I have Saturn with Aquarius and I have a stellium in Leo. So Pluto is sitting on my Mercury. It's been there for a while. I've been getting used to it. So I do find that this eclipse was actually not bad. I have not slept that much in several weeks. I'm getting up in the middle of the night almost
Yeah.
all the time, but I'm
Mm,
also not feeling so dragged anymore. And I think that had to do with Saturn moving out of Pisces. So it is literally, I think I've finally surrendered.
Yeah.
It was like surrendering to the movement. And also, as Rhiannon and Brett, you were saying, the practice of understanding now there is this like charge of very fast moving information in air and the old body practices, like you said, Tawa, that you were doing, are just really kind of not enough. Now you have to shift and look for something different and something even completely off the cuff. Like if chopping vegetables is your jam and you get into a meditative state, that is a way of clearing out your brain for maybe 5 minutes. And
Yeah.
that's the thing that will help. And so the journaling is really helpful, the sitting and meditation. A little plug for anybody who loves nightlight astrology. Adam Allenboss is offering uh, quiet mornings every day from Monday to Saturday, 9:30 a.m. You can sit for 20 minutes in silence. And that has actually been, and on Sundays, 11:30 for a half an hour. That has been actually what's been grounding me, really
mm,
helping me ground my mind and slowing it down because Pluto being on Mercury, it's already at, I use blender speeds as my rating. And so I'm like, it's at liquefy right now. We're not at purify, liquefy, but I feel it. And so, but with a lot of that is a lot of, I've had a wave of amazing information and learning coming in because it's across this Aquarius Leo creative thinking axis. So my brain just wants more, 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 more information, which is a blessing and a curse. So there
mm,
is a I'm learning all of this amazing information, processing grief, studying end of life practices, studying about illusory forms, all the stuff, and then still trying to just be like a human in the world and walk normally. Which
Yeah.
sometimes doesn't coincide. So that's where I am today. So it's just
Yeah.
kind of accepting and moving slowly. I go half an hour by half an hour sometimes. Best way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all so much for all of your great insight and sharing. Is there anything else that we need to say before we wrap it up and say goodbye to all these lovely people?
Thank you for being here.
We're good.
That's
Yes. Thank
Yeah,
you for being
yeah.
thank you.
here.
thank you.
Take care of yourself. We hope that you're well. Yeah. All right. Goodbye for today.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Peace.